So this is a quick demonstration of retainers within Accelo. So there are a couple of things to be aware of with terminology. There are retainers, which is essentially a contract in the system, and these have retainer periods in them, which fire at set intervals. So the most common example is you are working with a client for a year or 2 years or into infinity, and you have set work to do each month or each quarter. So maybe you have to test some updates, run a report, and hold an update meeting with the client. There's a little bit to be aware of in the setup of retainers, which all lives in the configuration area, but I'm not going to go into that into too much detail, although I will explain where you're able to make those changes. So if we go up to the top here and create a new retainer, just being aware that it's possible to change module names in Accelo. So instead of a retainer, you may call this a contract or an agreement or a service plan. We've then got one of Accelo's standard entry pages. So these look the same whether you're entering a company, a project, a retainer, a ticket, or similar. So first of all, the title of the retainer. So we'll just say, example, so a silver plan, the company that you're going to be working for. And obviously here you can choose anyone in your system, or you can create a new company if you need to. Who is going to manage this retainer? So in other words, which person inside your company is responsible for delivery? And then you'll see here we have a type. So this is where the configuration comes in. At this point, we've got just one type, which is monthly time and materials. So in other words, the periods are going to fire once a month, and the client is charged for the work that we do. So if I select this, make it active, you'll see that the period has set to a fixed period of 1 month. The billing is post-paid, so we bill them at the end for whatever we use. There's no budget, and the periods automatically renew each time, which is commonly what you will want to do in the system. We've also got a commenced and expiry date back in this first column. So the commence date will default to today, but you can change that if you want to. And there is also an expiry, which is quite important. So if you've got a contract or a service plan that just goes on until the client tells you otherwise, you can leave these blank. Otherwise, if you wanted to say, for example, we will do this work through this calendar year, it's then possible to go in and set an expiry, and at that point, no more periods will fire. So we'll just set a billable contact here. There's a couple of settings that I won't go into too much detail here that just relate to finance. So if you want a particular invoice template and specific tracking in your accounting. Just for reference, if we'd had other types here, we could, for example, say that the period is prepaid and you have some fixed hours included. So we could say that the client pays $1,000, and for that they get, let's say, 8 hours of service. And you can also then specify how you want to charge the excess amounts. This also gives you another couple of options of how you want to handle rollover and things like that. But for this example, I'll just go and reselect monthly time and materials, and we'll just do the simple example. Now, you can also have tasks or materials that you use on each period. So for example, we could say the first thing that we have to do is review previous month's reporting. That will take us an hour, and that will be due, I'm sorry, that's wrong. That will be due when the retainer commences, or sorry, it'll start when the retainer commences, and it will be due 5 days later. It uses a standard rate, and it's the manager of the retainer that needs to do that. So give that a save. Add another task, and then say draft review for client, 4 hours, and let's say that is 1 week into the period. and is due 1 week before the end of the period. And then finally, we might say a couple of days before the end of the period, we hold a client meeting. These three things happen, and this is all the basics of the retainer as a whole. So I'll create that retainer in the system. Now you'll notice here that this top section, especially on the left-hand side here, looks a little bit unremarkable because this is a simple post-paid retainer. If we'd had allowances, there would be a little bit more information showing here. You'll also see that this first period has been created. There's 30 days to go on this contract, so this month, and we've got 5 hours left of work to do. Now, I can go into this period and I can see the tasks that have to be done there. So if I look into this period, what I'll do here is I'll just go into one of my tasks and I'll pretend in this case, so the previous month's reporting I've done. Put some notes in, completed, and let's just say this took me 45 minutes. Now within this period, you will be able to see, when it refreshes, you'll be able to see the amount of work that's been logged in this period. So there's 45 minutes, which is $123.75 against this task. If we go out to the whole retainer, you'll also be able to see down in the bottom section here, one of 3 tasks has been completed and the $123 has been used. And I can't unfortunately show this because it wouldn't happen automatically for another month. But what would happen at the end of the month is a draft invoice would be created. Obviously, if it's a free service you're providing, the invoice doesn't get created. And a next period would be created. But what I'll do here is I'll just create the period manually. Just imagine that this would have happened because a month has passed in this retainer. And at that case, you would have another period in the system, and you can start to see here, looking back, what you've used in each period, how many tasks were complete, what was done, and so on. And as with all modules of the system, these tasks also live out on the main task board. So if, as we recommend, you're using that for your day-to-day management, then the tasks will show off here as well when the particular period comes in. So hopefully that makes sense as an overview of retainers within Accelo.